grew up in Anderson.
Yes, Anderson is home.
Now, did you ever imagine you'd be working at Clemson doing something like this?
No, I didn't see that. I'll be honest with you. Growing up, the youngest of 5, first generation. So my family didn't really know about college, didn't really know, we were just focusing on getting through school, graduating high school. Fortunately for me, I had a guidance counselor that saw potential. And I think that's one of the reasons that I chose education eventually, was because I know how impactful people in education were for me. And I want to do that. I want to impact some other young person's life with helping them be successful in education and in their future. So he started talking to me about college, talking to me about the SAT and how to prepare. And he also introduced me to Erskine and helped me to apply for and get invited for a scholarship competition. Went to Erskine, really loved the environment and the atmosphere. Parents fell in love with it, and of course, being the baby, they wanted me to be somewhere safe. So I started out being math, computer science, because I was always good at math, and learned after I had to do a few programming courses, maybe that's not where you want to go. Loved English, loved reading, loved literature, and so I ended up being an English major with a math minor. And people look at me and say, that's weird, either you're one or the other. So I guess I'm weird, I accept that. Did not think about education at the time, but just so happened, after I had graduated, I received a call from Butler Derrick's office. They had one of their congressional aides that was getting married and moving away. And the congressional aide that was leaving had been an Erskine grad. So she apparently had impressed them. And so they called Erskine and talked to the dean of women and said, this person was wonderful, can you recommend somebody else? She recommended me. So that's how I fell into my first job, and it was a wonderful experience to work there for about 3 or 4 years. It gave me an opportunity to meet people, to go out and represent him in the community, and I think that's probably when I was bitten by the bug of community work. Went back to Erskine, started out working in admissions as an admissions counselor, and then moved into development, once again realizing, that's really not your calling. But did that for a few years. While I was there, knew that I enjoyed working in higher ed and knew that I loved the interaction with college students. And that's when I decided it's time to go back and work on a graduate degree. So ended up going to Clemson and worked on a master's in education and counseling. And while I was there, I was introduced to my next job, which was at Anderson Youth Association, which is now New Foundations. And so I was there, and I ended up being the director of their crisis stabilization program. It was an organization that worked with children and families if children had behavioral issues, psychological issues, and they were not able to stay in their home environment. They could not function in the school, and so we had different areas under Anderson Youth Association to try to help address their needs. So with me being director of the crisis stabilization program, we actually were a program where students were residents of the crisis program for anywhere from 30 to 60, 90 days. A lot of people can look at that and say that that's really difficult work, and yes, it is, but it was a much needed program for the community, and it was an opportunity for me to work with young people to help them to, as I said, to learn behaviors, and ultimately, sometimes you couldn't do it, but ultimately you would hope that you could reunify them with family. That whole agency provided an incredible service to the community, and still does, as a matter of fact. So I also decided that while I was at Anderson Youth Association to go back to school and work on a PhD, because I knew higher ed was that. So ended up going back to Clemson, worked on a PhD in higher ed leadership. At the time, I was thinking, I think it'd be kind of cool to be a college dean. Didn't really know what that entailed, but thought that'd be kind of cool. My faith and my family are huge parts of my foundation, and that's what's kept me in Anderson. That's what's kept me grounded. It's kept me to be who I am. I think about, there's a scripture, I think it's 1 Corinthians 15:10, that says, but by the grace of God, I am who I am. So that helps me to know that there's really not anything great to me. I've been given some wonderful opportunities. I've been surrounded by some incredible people, great family that's been supportive, and so yeah, it's a lot to Beverly, not all about Beverly, and so I'm thankful for that and count my blessings every day. Was married and had 2 children, working on my master's, and when I went back to work on my PhD, the third one came along. Definitely wasn't easy. especially being a wife and mom and trying to go back to school. But I did have an incredible support system, as I said. Family and friends were very supportive and helped us get through that. But that was one of the things that I think kept me going, is what message is this sending not only to my children, but other young people. And so working in higher ed, if any of those college students come to me and say, I just don't think I can do this, you're telling the wrong person. Let me tell you, you can do this, and this is how I know you can do this. And so I believe those experiences were given to me for a reason, and I do believe that higher ed is my calling. That's where I'm to be, to work with young people and help them be successful. I actually was in a diversity training through Tri-County Tech, met Dr. Bob Hanley, who was at Anderson University. He had a position open. I applied for the position. It was Director of Freshman Programs and Community Service. And just seems like the job description was written for me because it fit so well with what I enjoyed doing, and stayed there for about 16 and a half years. Shortly after that, became an Associate Dean, Student Development, then an Associate Vice President, still working with Dr. Hanley. And then he decided to go back into the classroom because he missed that after so many years in administration. And so then when he decided to do that, there was an opportunity for some restructuring. And I was approached by Dr. Evans Whitaker about a position he had been considering. And it was actually like a chief of staff position. He and I had talked a number of times about my aspirations. And we had talked about my potential and if I had any interest in one day being a college president. And I had thought about that. Didn't know if I was cut from the cloth to do that, but had thought about that. And so that was one of the reasons he had identified me for that position, because he thought he saw some things in me and wanted to give me an opportunity to work closely with him in the event that I did want to do that. I would have this experience of what does it look like, the management of an institution and the financial piece of it and the development part of it and the academic, and really seeing the big picture. It's a 24/7. I mean, you give your life to the institution in that role, and it's understandable. And I told him, I said, I don't know if I want to make that kind of commitment. There are lots of other things, my family and, community, other things that are important. And so I don't want to limit myself to only being able to do a job and not being able to do a lot of the other things I love. During the time that I was working with him, I was working closely with him on the strategic plan for the university. And a part of that was focusing on diversity. And so as we talked about that, we talked about the fact that we really needed to have a position solely devoted to diversity on campus-wide. And so he asked me if that would be something that I would be interested in doing, and I told him, of course, being passionate about that as well. And so I moved into the position of Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion on the campus of Anderson University, and did that up until I left to join Clemson University.
What would you tell other young women who are looking to get into positions of leadership? What are some of the challenges they can face, and encouraging maybe how they can do this?
I think first and foremost, you have to believe in yourself. That's key. And also the importance of having mentors. I think about Dr. Beatrice Thompson. I think about what she has meant to me, how I have watched her, and her only being a phone call away for me. So I think that mentor system, being able to develop a relationship with someone that's kind of been there and kind of tell you the pros and cons and help, shepherd you through that process. So that's really key. I definitely think faith, maintaining your faith, and it's one thing, I didn't really make a New Year's resolution. So what I told myself is that for the past couple of years, I've said this, is that, on a daily basis, you need to recite the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's something that keeps me grounded as well, because there are things that I have no control over, and I have to understand that. But the things I do have control over, and that I know that I can make a difference in some way, then have the courage to do that. Don't be afraid to try something new. Stretch yourself. don't limit yourself, really take advantage of opportunities and surround yourself with good people, a support system. All of that, I think, makes a difference. We can, see women in positions, as I said, presidents of institutions, corporations, serving in governmental roles. If, just looking at the U.S. and the number of women now that are serving in Congress and those sorts of things. So the doors definitely are open, and I think that's another piece of it too. And as I talk about, loving the community and being involved in the community, also don't be afraid to run for office. I actually put my name in the hat for school board, kind of starting and just trying to see where it went. Wasn't successful the first time around, but that doesn't mean that, you stop there. And I think when we can put ourselves in those positions where we can actually be a part of affecting change, then that means a lot as well. So as I say, just looking at the examples we see, the people that have, paved the way for us, we have to take advantage of those opportunities. But at Clemson, even on a bad day, it's a great day. And that's a good feeling. I really feel like I've come home. As I said, I've spent many years there, watched kids come through there, and it's just a wonderful place to be, and I love it. My thing is God's timing is always perfect, and it was time for me to make that transition, and it has been wonderful, and I am loving life. I am. Just been so blessed and just thankful for all of that.